Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Cover 2 podcast. I am Nick Nenad.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And Jared, we got a fun show today. We are talking football like we usually do, but we're doing something that we've never done before on this podcast. We are going to follow along live with the announcement of the college football playoff, top 25 and realistically the top 6. We will be watching the ESPN broadcast in between the Kansas, Michigan State, and Duke, Kentucky college basketball games because, Jared, we have college basketball back. It's a great time to be a sports fan. And yeah, we'll be going live. Jared and I are already synced up, so we're going to start with the NFL, and there's obviously so much to talk about in that. And then whenever we need to join in on that live broadcast, we will, and we will be Kirk Herbstreit and Lee Corso and whoever the hell else is on that broadcast, and we'll be them for you. So you'll get our commentary just the same as you will the ESPN guys that probably have a little bit more biases than we do. So this is going to be better than I think watching. Unfortunately, we're not doing this live, obviously, but you'll be seeing this Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and whenever other day you're watching this podcast. But Jared, how excited are you? We have a new sport starting up again. You know, the NBA, NHL are in full season. We're missing out on baseball, but football is getting in the nitty gritty. How excited are you as a sports fan just this week again with a new sport joining in?
I mean, dude, listen, like summer is always my favorite time of the year, like regardless. But my second, like a 1B has to be this time of the year right now. We have the NFL in the thick of it, right? Basically midway through the year. We've got the NBA going on. The college basketball starts tonight. The college football is in basically the thick of it as well. NHL hockey has started, right? I mean, the only sport that's really not going on right now is baseball. So there is so many sports going on, so much news to talk about and dissect and discuss. And that's what we're here to do tonight, is not only talk about the NFL week 9, recap all that. We have storylines within the NFL to get to. We got the college football rankings that Nick just talked about. I've got on my TV right now, I got the NBA game. I got Milwaukee and Philly going on, right?
Nice.
On my computer, right underneath me here, I got the college basketball game, Kansas, Michigan State going on. So, I mean, I mean, if my eyes start wandering, you know why. It's not because Nick is boring me, although sometimes he may have a boring take or two.
Wow.
No, it is. I just listen. I'm still a little emotional. My Cowboys lost and they got their ass whooped this weekend. So I'm still, there's certain things that just, trigger me a little bit. So excuse me if I'm a little off today with some of my takes. I'm still baffled by what happened. Fortunately, I didn't see the game live. Good. Thankfully, I just heard about it. But yeah, no, I got a lot of screens going on right now. So we got a lot of information to throw at you guys. We're going to bring it to you live as quick as we can. And man, I mean, obviously the NFL is usually what I'm most excited to talk about, but this college football, selection, top 4 or top 6, I should say. Let's go, man. I'm ready to dive into it.
It's going to be fun. Jared, it's going to be fun. I unfortunately did have to watch your Cowboys game, which wasn't much of a game on the Cowboys end. But yeah, so much to talk about. And we're going to start with Odell Beckham Jr. is a free agent, guys. Odell Beckham Jr. is free to sign with any NFL team. Did I think I'd be hearing that this year? Hell no. There's a couple teams, Jared, that we're hearing he's going to go to. It's really not like that big of a list of teams. He has stated that his number one priority is the Green Bay Packers, which have been in the news for very, very negative reasons recently. What do you think of all this craziness going on with the Odell Beckham story, and who do you think he will end up choosing to sign with?
Well, it's not surprising if you've been following this story or following the NFL, especially if you're a Browns fan. I mean, the moment that the Browns traded for Odell Beckham, right, it's been somewhat of a disaster. Not only on the field when he's actually been healthy, it seems like him and Baker have never been able to find that rhythm, right? They haven't been able to get that like spark. Odell looks at Baker, Baker looks back at Odell, and they know exactly the route combination that they're going to do, and they've been in sync. Right now, Odell has also been injured on and off, which has been huge. He had that ACL, if I'm not mistaken, last year. So he's come back from that as well. Baker's dealing with a shoulder injury right now. But I'm not going to completely put this on injuries. I think this is a combination of both of these players and the coaching staff not putting these players in the right positions to make plays, right? Odell Beckham Jr. is the guy that loves targets. He needs 8 to 10 targets a game. Well, guess what? This Browns offense, they run the football and play great defense. They're not a spread you out 5 wide, just gonna do an air attack like the Arizona Cardinals or like some other teams may do. Baker Mayfield is not built that way, right? If you think Baker Mayfield is going to drop back 40 or 50 times a game and attempt passes, that is a recipe for disaster, right? Baker Mayfield's 2 best friends are Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, because that is one of the best running back tandems in the entire league. They control the clock. They control the ball. They average 4 yards per carry. Both of them do. And that's what the Browns like to do. They like to run the ball and then use play action off of it. Honestly, I think Odell gets a little bored. He's like, you're not throwing the ball my way. I mean, at a certain point, I think that's just Odell's nature. I'm not trying to bash him at all, but he's not one of those guys that's going to run 110% on every single play. If he doesn't think that he's getting the ball, we've seen it, right? I feel like we've seen Odell being checked out of certain games, dropping passes, not running crisp routes, not running at 100% full speed, right? We never saw that when he was in New York, right? When he really made a name for himself. He was catching one-handed passes, doing all these crazy things. And I mean, I feel like this year and last, we've seen more drop passes than ever from Odell. So I really think he wasn't 100% checked in and buying into what Cleveland was doing. And now I think this is the best case scenario for both sides, right? The Cleveland Browns, they get that kind of diva receiver, out of their locker room, out of their organization. And we see what they did this past Sunday. They whooped the Cincinnati Bengals. It was like 41-19 or something like that, 41-20. I forget the total score, but it wasn't close, right? I mean, Cleveland looked a lot better without Odell. And I think Odell is happy because he gets to get out of Cleveland where they don't throw the ball as much. And like you mentioned, whether it's the Green Bay Packers, the LA Rams, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Seattle Seahawks, he wants to go somewhere where he can not only contend to win right now, but to an organization where that offensive philosophy is around throwing the football. So I think it's really plain and simple. It's good for both parties. Let's move on and let's actually play some football.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was kind of sick of hearing all the Baker Mayfield stuff and Odell stuff and how they weren't in sync. And clearly they weren't, like you said. And I won't get into that because you explained it pretty well. It is odd, though, with Odell that, like, we're acting like he's not, like, at fault for this, that we're kind of blaming Baker, or a lot of the media is blaming Baker for this. But it's like, Odell Beckham Jr. has been a problem in the locker room and off the field, ever since he took that picture on that boat before a playoff game. I mean, it's been a long time.
That was a curse right there.
It has, right? It is the biggest football curse we've seen in a while. And, I just think it's like, yes, Odell Beckham Jr. is a premium talent at wide receiver. But when you look at his demeanor on the field and off the field, and you look at how many problems he causes, why does a contender really want to sign this guy and maybe mix up your locker room, right? And mess it up. Right. So it's a very interesting storyline for me to watch, Jared, because if I was like my Arizona Cardinals, like if we needed a receiver, I'd be like, no, I don't want Odell. Like, we have a great team. We have one loss. Like, we're good. Right. And it's like, so if you're the Green Bay Packers or the Seattle Seahawks or whoever else might sign him, it's like, are you really going to bring that guy in to maybe mess up your locker room a little bit? But his talent is great, right? So it's very, very interesting. Now, Jared, you didn't answer my first question, though, in full. Where do you think Odell ends up in all this? Where do you think he ends up?
I really think there's two spots.
Might go to.
I think there's 2 spots. I tweeted it earlier a couple hours ago. It's the Green Bay Packers or it's the Kansas City Chiefs, right? If he's really about winning, if that's his number one priority as far as what these NFL sources have come out and said, Adam Schefter's of the world, the other guys, right? If his number one priority is winning because he's already made a crap ton of money, right? Then I think his best spot is Bay, because they have Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, right? And they've never really had a two-headed threat or since, the days of Jordy Nelson and Donald Driver, right? So it's been a little while since Aaron Rodgers has had multiple threats on the outside. So that to me would be, I think, the best case scenario for Odell, because I think that's where he would see the most targets. If you were to go to Kansas City, which is my second destination for him, I still think he would be effective, but I don't know if he would see as many targets because I think Kansas City has a few more weapons, right? And Kansas City distributes the ball a little bit more, in my opinion, than Green Bay does. I think Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones get the bulk of the receptions and carries and looks, to where in Kansas City, you obviously have Tyreek Hill, right? You have Travis Kelce, you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire when he's healthy, but then they also like to spread the ball around to Mecole Hardman, Demarcus Robinson, and the host of their receivers and weapons. So to me, I think Odell kind of check his ego a little bit more in Kansas, but then he's got to look and say, all right, I think for him, AFC with Kansas City, NFC with the Packers, right? I think he's got to look and say, okay, who has a better path? And I'm not saying easier. I'm not saying that he's trying to take the easy route, but realistically, how can you help yourself, right? You can't not look and say, okay, this is Kansas City's schedule. This is obviously the division that they're in, and this is who we would potentially play in the playoffs for the AFC and the NFC. So number one team, Green Bay Packers, because of Aaron Rodgers, and I think he would get more targets, right? The second team would be the Kansas City Chiefs, because even though they have been not that same Kansas City team we've seen the last couple of years, I still do not doubt that when healthy, they can turn that switch on and start clicking at any moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an interesting year so far for the Kansas City Chiefs. My goodness, Jared. Like every single game you go into, you expect them to improve, and they're just not, but they have all the same players. It's like weird, besides the offensive line, of course. I think the obvious, like you said, the obvious number one is the Green Bay Packers, and Odell Beckham Jr., the rumor is that that's who he wants to go to. And Jared, that's the only contender that really fits him. Like, the Seattle Seahawks are sort of a contender. I think that's the the Russell Wilson rub, right? Without Russell Wilson, this team sucks, and they're a really bad NFL team. I know a lot of people are saying the Saints possibly because of Michael Thomas. Well, who's their quarterback? Trevor Siemian? Trevor Siemian can't get the ball to Odell. That'd be like Daniel Jones throwing the ball to Odell, right? It's the same thing that he already dealt with. And then when you even look at the Chiefs, Jared, I don't consider them a true contender this year. And I think there's too many weapons, like you said, on the offense. He'd be in the same spot as Cleveland, but obviously a little bit more pass opportunities. So yeah, the clear team in the number one place to get Odell is the Green Bay Packers. And Jared, that scares me because obviously they beat my Arizona Cardinals when everybody was healthy too. So I don't want to see that. I'll give you one.
I got one more team.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, okay. To me, this isn't a dark horse. This is just.
Yeah.
But I was gonna throw in your Cardinals division rivals in the Rams. I get it. They got Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods,
true,
but I think that offense. I mean, here's the thing. I also don't know if they have any money to spend, because not only have they given up all their draft picks for the next 3 years, but they have Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, and Von Miller on. It's like I don't know where they're coming up with this money to pay players.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say, and for people who don't know, because Odell Beckham did clear waivers, right? No team picked him up during that waiver period, right? It's a new negotiation. Cleveland is still paying Odell a certain percentage of his contract, but whichever team Odell signs with, it's a completely new deal. So if Odell is really about winning, then he will more than likely sign for less money, right? He's not going to sign for a crazy amount because it's only going to be for half of the season. And so I think that's where the Rams could be in play, because I think the Rams, obviously, I think their offensive attack and what they do, I think that also could suit Odell. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, the Rams make sense, but like you said, their salary cap situation and the fact that he would be like the clear number 3 guy on that team receiving, and Matt Stafford, I mean, we'll talk about this later in the podcast, did not look good this Sunday against one of the best teams in the AFC, and has kind of looked a little off as the Rams quarterback in general, and it's not working out as well as people think. Anybody can beat the Giants and the Jaguars and all these teams the Rams blew out the last couple of weeks, but they got blown out by Tennessee without Derrick Henry. I mean, Adrian Peterson scored a touchdown in that game. And no disrespect to Adrian Peterson, but the guy is just not it anymore, right? So Yeah, my other dark horse was the Las Vegas Raiders, Jared, and it's probably unlikely that it happens. But obviously, with what happened to Henry Ruggs and what we talked about last week, I think there's a spot for him to be the clear number one wide receiver. Obviously, there's Darren Waller, there's Hunter Renfrow, but out of a team that's not really a contender, but super close to being a contender, and maybe Odell can put them over that hump in the AFC, which is kind of a topsy-turvy division. I think that's the dark horse. Jared, you obviously see me kind of speaking quickly because we are going to go straight into college football right now. We're done with the Odell segment. We'll see where he signs. Jared, you think Green Bay Packers? I do too. I think he'll sign with the Green Bay Packers. So that's our official prediction here. Jared, college football playoff is going through the top 25 right now. We don't really need to talk about these teams because there's too many 2-loss, 3-loss teams in these rankings. Real quickly, what would be really, really surprising for you before these rankings are officially revealed as we see 15 through 11?
It would be now you do have to forgive me. For those who don't know, and I didn't preface by saying this, I think I told you guys I did not watch the Cowboy game on Sunday, nor did I watch any college football. That's because I was in Cabo all weekend celebrating my dad's 60th birthday. I was at an all-inclusive resort, a little occupied on the beach, drinking, having a good time. So just getting back, just kind of getting, back into the swing of things, back into normal. So I didn't really see much games this weekend, and so I'm gonna defer to you a lot.
Sure.
When it comes to these rankings and whether you think that they're correct or incorrect. I'm trying to think here. I guess from what I know or what I think I know, the craziest thing for me would probably be to have Alabama back at number 1.
Okay. That's fair. That would be insane. And they barely beat LSU, so that's probably not going to happen. At number 10 is revealed to be Oklahoma State, as we're watching live right now. Jared, my craziest thing would be if Cincinnati's not in the top 5. Or, excuse me, not in the top 4. If Cincinnati is not in the top 4, I might go insane. Okay, we had the number, who was it? The number 3 team lose in Michigan State this week. So obviously there's an extra spot. I don't think Oklahoma with their win jumps too far, ahead. So it will be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens here. Like we said, number 10 is Oklahoma State. Number 9 is Notre Dame. They just jumped to Oklahoma State. They were behind Oklahoma State in the rankings last week. I'm pretty sure, and they just jumped them. So interesting there. Notre Dame does not have a very difficult schedule to end this season. Oklahoma State obviously with a bad loss to Iowa State a week ago. So they have a bad loss. They still play Oklahoma. They still potentially play 2 more ranked games with the college football, the conference championship. So last week, Oklahoma was number 8 at 9-0. So this is going to be very, very interesting to see who is number 8 here as we watch these rankings. Oklahoma is still number 8, Jared. That's pretty crazy. That is pretty crazy. And right, Jared, we agree on this too. We agree that Oklahoma, although they are 9-0, they have not played like a true college football playoff contender. But I bet you people are going nuts.
I've played that all year.
Yeah, they played like crap the whole year. So pretty interesting here with the college football playoff so far. Number 8 is still Oklahoma. And there was a lot of controversy last week, Jared, also. Like, we tended to agree a little bit on the college football playoff. A lot of people hated it.
I'm going through right now the scores here from last week. I'm looking. Oh, so Oklahoma. Okay, so they were on a bye.
They were on a bye, but they do not move up at all.
You know what though? It's. I think as much as we don't like it, I hate saying this, but it's like when a team's on a bye and they didn't get like blown out or they didn't have a bad week the previous week.
Yeah,
you can't really move them down, right? I mean, as much as it sucks to see Oklahoma there because you and I both know that they're frauds. They obviously won 2 weeks ago, and then this past weekend they're on a bye. So I mean, it's. I'm really not surprised that Georgia number 1.
Yeah, not surprising. I mean, Georgia
that's not surprising.
Blown everybody to hell. Now this could be interesting here Alabama did win at number 2, but you wonder if maybe a team bumps down. No, that makes sense. So number 3, realistically, it should be Oregon, which is kind of crazy. There you go.
It should be, but listen,
Oregon's number 3. They're going.
They also didn't. I mean, I'm looking at the score sheet. They didn't impress either. They only beat Washington by 10.
No, they suck.
I mean,
Cincinnati is not number 5. Man, it's interesting. I mean, I know they were number 6. And I know only one, top 4 team lost, but no.
So Cincinnati has to be 5, right? Cincinnati has to be 5.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, if they're not 5, that'd be a travesty. I think they have to be number 5. Yeah. Okay. There you go. I mean, yeah. Again, the problem with this here too is now Georgia is number 1, Alabama number 2, Ohio State Oregon number 3, Ohio State number 4. If all those teams just win out, they get in. And Cincinnati doesn't have a chance. It's based on what last rank.
I mean, here's the thing: Georgia and Alabama are going to play each other in the SEC championship. That's a given, right?
That won't affect Georgia though. Georgia, if they are undefeated going into that game, no matter what happens in that game, they'll still get the final. It's Alabama that could get eliminated. Say it again. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if they lose before that, it's going to be tough for them to get in if they lose to Alabama. I just don't think Alabama is as good as we thought they were, though. Right? I mean, they barely beat LSU the other night, and they've had some close games, and obviously with a big loss to Texas A&M.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that they only beat LSU by 6. I mean, LSU is in shambles. They obviously everyone knows about Coach O, how he's out at the end of the year. I think this game, and I might have said it on last week's podcast, this is LSU was going to come in fighting. This is Coach O's last, LSU Alabama game. So I thought this game was going to be close, but then I figured Alabama will pull away at the end. So the fact that they didn't, to me, is a little bit alarming.
Jared,
what do we got here?
The disrespect we just saw to Oklahoma. Okay, so the top 8, as we're seeing it: Georgia number 1, number 2 is Alabama, number 3 is Oregon, number 4 is Ohio State, number 5 is Cincinnati, number 6 is Michigan, number 7 is Michigan State, who lost to Purdue last week. So they are disrespecting Oklahoma. Jared, what's your opinion on this? Because obviously we have not liked what Oklahoma's done, but they have won every single one of their games. And Michigan State with a bad loss to Purdue, who's a ranked team at this point, but still a loss to Purdue by double digits. You're not going to bump Oklahoma at least above them. That's incredible, and that's very, very interesting to me. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't like that at all. I don't. There must be a Michigan State fan in that committee that was pounding the table to keep them at number 7, because you're right. As much shit and as much crap as we talk in Oklahoma, at the end of the day, they still are undefeated, right, and have won every game. And Michigan had a bad loss at Purdue. Okay, Purdue has been a decent team this year, but it's still Purdue. They were not ranked during this time, and they just beat a number 3 ranked team. Michigan State should have blown out Purdue. So you're right. To me, Michigan State, in my opinion, should be out of the top 10.
Well, Jared, how
kept it in the top 10?
But here's the thing: they beat Michigan, and Michigan's ahead of them. So look, you're telling me you're going to put Oregon above Ohio State, even though, Jared, I think we both believe Ohio State's a better team, right? Even though they lost.
Oh, right now, yes. Oh, right now.
Yeah.
If Oregon and Ohio State played right now, Ohio State whipped their ass. Different Ohio State team the first month of the season when Oregon went and beat them. No disrespect and all the credit in the world to Oregon, but that will be a different game right now.
But here's the thing. So we're seeing this doesn't make any logical sense now, these rankings, okay? And we're not hearing what the commissioner of the college football playoff, who probably should lose his job after these first 2 weeks. But so you're telling me that Ohio State lost to Oregon and they're behind them, which makes a lot of sense. We believe, though, Ohio State's a better team. But Michigan State loses to Purdue, and Michigan loses to Michigan State, and Michigan State's behind them. Jerry, that makes no sense. That makes no logical sense. And this college football playoff is turning into kind of a disaster these first 2 weeks. I mean, this is ridiculous. I actually understand a little bit putting Oklahoma behind these two teams because I think there's a chance Michigan State beats Oklahoma. Like, that's a pretty close game if you put that into the college, if you put them together right now.
Yeah.
But we already saw Michigan State beat Michigan. So what's going on?
Couldn't tell you. I'm dumbfounded. I don't know. I don't know. I wish at this moment we had viewers where they were able to chime in,
oh my goodness,
respond, message, call in or something, because I think we need help, right? We need to have a direct line to the college football playoff committee or something, or someone that knows a little more than us, because what you just explained makes perfect sense. You beat a team, you should be ahead of them, irregardless of what happens. Right? I mean, Michigan State, it's only been 1 week.
Well, Jared, it's not even it's not that. It's that obviously you can, like, is Texas A&M better than Alabama? No, right? But they beat Alabama.
Hell no.
But when you have a direct comparison of two exact same situations and one happening later in the season, it's completely backwards. Ohio State should be higher than Oregon in the rankings, okay? Realistically, Ohio State should be number 3, but we understand that because Oregon beat them, yes, you go ahead of them. But then you put Michigan State behind Michigan when Michigan State beat Michigan last week. Jared, this makes no sense. I'm so glad we're doing this live. This is crazy. Absolutely crazy. I have no idea who's getting into the college football playoff now. And I guess that's sort of cool, but
maybe that's why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they're doing it. Maybe every single week up until the last, they're going to keep screwing with us and messing with our minds.
That's true.
I mean, I will say this year has been one of the most wide open and craziest seasons when it comes to the rankings, right? Usually it's like, all right. And so far, I think Georgia has been that team because they have been the most complete and most dominant, but still, we always think of an Alabama or a couple teams that it's like, okay, these are clear cut. This year, I think we can really only say that about Georgia. Like, Alabama obviously had that collapse, and then they haven't really played like the Alabama that we would, right? Ohio State, we know their issues. Oregon, we know their like there's every team we can almost pinpoint to having issues.
True.
And then Cincinnati, the only problem with them is that they're not in the SEC or they're not in the Big 10 or the Big 12. That is really Cincinnati's only issue.
And Cincinnati did struggle with Tulsa this week. It didn't help them out. And it does make sense. But again, I think if Cincinnati and Ohio State played, I'd probably favor Ohio State by at least a touchdown in that game. And I think if Oregon were to play Cincinnati, it would probably be a little bit closer, but I'd probably favor Oregon over them. But again, that's fine. Like, I'm okay with that because I think Oregon probably will lose on their way to the college football playoff. It just kind of seems like that's going to happen. Ohio State still plays Michigan. They still play another solid, Big Ten team, which has been a great division and conference in college football in the Big Ten championship game. And obviously Alabama and Georgia will play each other, but we'll just see. I mean, here's another thing, Jared. When you look at Alabama being number 2, having lost to, at that time, an unranked team, if Cincinnati goes undefeated and Alabama's one of their losses against Georgia, is there a chance you think this committee puts Alabama ahead of Cincinnati? Because, Jared, I think even if Alabama loses twice, we're still thinking that Alabama's the better team, right? So that's maybe this is the best college football playoff ever, right? Where they're actually picking based on who they think the best teams are, which will piss off every fan base in the world. But, like, I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think if Alabama were to just go undefeated and lose to Georgia, that they warrant themselves a college football playoff spot regardless?
I can see that happening, man. Listen, when you are Alabama and you've been so great for so long, sometimes you get a little leeway. I think sometimes you get a little slack. Like, It's like, I mean, you want to put the best four teams in that have the best chance to create the best matchups, right? And
Yeah.
I think sometimes at the end of the day, people are lost in their old ways of thinking Nick Saban's still there. Like,
Yeah.
Alabama still has every five-star recruit known to man. Like, it's almost like, okay, at some point, we're still waiting and waiting and waiting. It's like they're going to go and just start blowing people out. I think that's, I mean, even if we get to the
Yeah.
college football playoff, and it's like we still got to put them in because at some point, Alabama can go off. I mean, I just, it doesn't really make a lot of logical sense to me. I think it's just one of those things of where, like, people are just stuck in their ways and they don't want to see, because Alabama can just always go up against any team. I can see it happening. But like I said, I think every single week up until that Final Four, they're going to screw with us, which they exactly screwed with us right now. We're both dumbfounded.
I'm dumbfounded by the Michigan State thing. That makes no sense. And that's not even I didn't even realize that at first. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? I guess that's probably we need the help of like Kirk Herbstreit and all them, right? On that moment. But like, that doesn't make any sense to me, Jared. Like, you beat Michigan a week ago. It's not like I can understand at the beginning if you lost the first game of the season to that team. Because it's there's no preseason for college football. Like I always say, first week and rivalry week, if the rivalry is somewhat competent, obviously sometimes we have some rivalries that are just ridiculously one-sided, but rivalry week and week one, it's okay to lose, in my opinion. I think you're okay to still get into the college football playoff or these big bowl games if you lose those games. If you lose to a rival or you lose the first game of the season, I don't think you should be punished as harsh. But yeah, I mean, this is ridiculous. This is the middle of the season. Michigan State, it's not like they lost by a ton to Purdue. They did lose by 2 possessions, but still, it's like, I don't know. Purdue also did beat Iowa at this point. Iowa's in the rankings as well. So it's not like Purdue is this horrible team, right? I don't get it. I don't get it at all. I'm looking. I want to see the schedule for this week coming up in college football just to see what we have. Yeah, what we have on now that we have these rankings.
All right.
Let me just give it a second. So Cincinnati plays South Florida. They play a 2-7 team. So again, you got to blow them the hell out. Alabama plays New Mexico State. Any comments on that, Jared?
Blowout?
Jared, they're 1-8. They're 1-8.
So that should be a 60-0. Bryce Young should not be playing in the fourth quarter.
I wouldn't play Bryce Young at all in that game, to be honest.
Here's an interesting one. Michigan at Penn State.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
Penn State's unranked, but still, like, you're going into that stadium. Big game.
No, that's a big game.
Michigan might be on upset alert. They might be on upset alert this week.
What's the line? Oh, the line's even. The line's even going in that game. Vegas doesn't know who's winning that game either. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Michigan wins that game. Jared, maybe they'll put him ahead of, or maybe they'll put him ahead of Alabama if they win that game based on these rankings so far. That helps Michigan, man. No, you
can't do that.
No, I'm joking. I was joking. I'm not serious.
They're both 8-1. You almost gave me a heart attack saying that. No, don't do that.
So we got another big game. Oklahoma plays Baylor. Now Baylor with a brutal loss to TCU this week when they were really coming on to be a really, really good team this year. They're ranked middle of the road now. But again, Oklahoma doesn't have a lot of strength of schedule wins. If they can go out and beat a Baylor team by 2 touchdowns, impressive. And I think they'll move up. I think they'll move up ahead of a Michigan State, depending on who Michigan State plays. And let me see who they're playing. Purdue plays Ohio State.
Michigan State. Hey, listen, Purdue's hot right now. Purdue just beat State.
They're good at home.
Again.
They're good at home.
Ohio State shouldn't be on upset alert, but Ohio State also can't just think of this game as a walkover. Like, absolutely. Purdue's riding high, so Purdue's going to have a little mojo, little extra kick in their step. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Ohio State's going to have to come in and be ready to play. Michigan State plays Maryland, so that should be a blowout.
Again, if it's like a close game between Michigan State between Michigan and Penn State, and then Here's the thing, Jared. Michigan State also plays Ohio State and Penn State to end the season after Maryland. So maybe the committee's giving Michigan a little bit more of a chance because Michigan they play Penn State. I don't know. They play the same exact freaking teams to end the season, Jared. It doesn't make any sense. Also, let me just say this. This will be the last thing we talk about on this. But if Alabama is number 2, right, and they're ahead of Ohio State and all these other teams, why is Texas A&M at 14? They beat Alabama. Wouldn't they probably be in the top 10 at that point? Don't we think Texas A&M would probably beat Notre Dame and Oklahoma State if they beat Alabama? This is another thing. It's I know Texas A&M really doesn't have a chance, but if Alabama is that good to be number 2 with 1 loss, when their loss was to an unranked team, and Oregon and Ohio State's losses were Oregon's was to Stanford, who's terrible, but Ohio State lost to Oregon. Why is Texas A&M so far down? They're number 11, I guess. The rankings updated as I was looking at the rankings.
I mean, they lost to, at the time, a ranked Arkansas. And then they lost at home to Mississippi State.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
So, and then the week after they beat Alabama, right? So it was you have a crazy loss, and then you come back and beat the number 1 team at that. You know what I mean? So,
and they beat Auburn 20-3. I mean, it's what I'm saying. It's almost like Texas A&M's getting better as the season goes on. Remember, Jerry, I'll never forget on this podcast,
but that's a good thing for Alabama.
True. Yeah, I mean, if Texas A&M ends up obviously in the top 8, it matters. But it's almost, I don't know. Very interesting stuff, Jared. I'm glad we watched this live, and I'm glad we were able to react to this because that is some nonsense. In my opinion, let me just give you what my kind of rankings would be. I got Georgia at number 1, Alabama at number 2. I would have Ohio State at number 3. I mean, I know that's probably super controversial, but I think Ohio State's better, and they beat a solid Nebraska team on the road last week. Oregon again lost to Stanford. Okay, I know they beat Ohio State early on in the season, but early losses mean less to me. I would have Cincinnati even ahead of Oregon in my opinion because I just think Cincinnati's a better team. But if I was a common sense, I probably would go with Oregon at number 4, Cincinnati at number 5, 100% Michigan State at number 6, and Michigan number 7. Because Michigan State still seems like a better team than Michigan to me, so it's not like the Ohio State Oregon situation. I guess I would still have Oklahoma at number 7 or number 8. So that wasn't as shocking. I think the most shocking thing here is the fact that Michigan is ahead of Michigan State. That is BS. Jared,
so you get to lose. You get to lose to your rival team who's ranked at the time, and then you still get to be ahead of them. Must be nice.
And Alabama gets to play a 1-8 New Mexico State team next week. They should lose, Jared. They should lose. Ohio State or whoever wins this week should go ahead of them even if they win. Doesn't matter, right? Any win by any of those teams is better than Alabama, right? Like Alabama, they could forfeit and it would be better. They could just be we're not going to play and we're going to play one play and if we score we win. It's crazy.
That's probably all they need is one play against New Mexico State. one long 80-yard touchdown bomb is probably all they need.
I hope New Mexico State puts up a little bit of a fight. I know it's not gonna happen, but imagine going to New Mexico State and you're we're 1-8 guys. We've lost 8 out of 9 games. We got Alabama coming. We gotta go.
They must be getting as a school over $1 million. They have to, right? Because when you're that small of a school, usually those games happen at the beginning of the year. Your team still has some hope, but to be playing this highly ranked of a team at the end of the season is just, and your team absolutely sucks. I mean, if you're a coach, what do you say? How do you get your guys fired up? I mean, to me, the only thing I could say is, hey guys, you're putting tape out there for NFL scouts. But then that's kind of being you focus on yourself, don't focus on the team. I mean, I really don't know what you say to a team like New Mexico State going into Alabama. I don't. And that's why I'm not a coach, because I really don't know how you get your team pumped up.
I would never. I wouldn't schedule Alabama. If I'm New Mexico State, I'm scheduling like Fresno State, and that's a tough game.
But the thing is, when you schedule those big time teams, those big time universities, they give you money. They give you $300,000, $500,000.
Money is power.
As a school, that's what I'm saying. New Mexico State. Imagine if they got $500,000 from Alabama to come to Alabama and get their ass whipped. You know what that could do for that program? Recruiting rise, building a new gym. You know what I mean? Like New Mexico can do some things with that type of money if they don't mind getting their ass kicked 70-0.
That's a good point.
You know, a 3-hour ass kicking to them, is that worth $500,000?
True. Very, very true. I mean, guys, interesting stuff. Jared, we got to do this. We got to maybe do this again. We got to maybe do this again next week.
Next Tuesday.
We gotta get back in the podcast though. So let's get back into the NFL somehow after all that. You know, we talked about Odell Beckham Jr. to start the show. So if for some reason you skipped to our college football segment here to watch us live, go back. We gave our opinions on Odell and who we think he'll join. We think it's the same team, realistically. Speaking of that team, Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers has been in the news for everything negative possible. Okay. And we know we talked about guys literally committing murder last week, but like Aaron Rodgers is under fire, you know, for not only from like NFL fans, but like, you know, like social media and like, you know, the news networks and stuff now with all the vaccine stuff. As you guys probably know, if you don't know, Aaron Rodgers essentially lied about his vaccination status and has been going around acting like he was vaccinated. He gets COVID. That's why he didn't play last week. That's why Jordan Love looked so freaking bad in that game last week, and looked like he's not absolutely at all ready to play in the NFL. But Aaron Rodgers doesn't play. It comes out that he has kind of this BS excuse for being vaccinated or the reason he doesn't have to wear a mask, follow any protocols. The Packers clearly let him do this. The Packers were fined $300,000 for this, and Aaron Rodgers was fined about $15,000 for this. Jared, your take on this? You know, he still might even miss this week when Russell Wilson returns to the Seahawks and plays his Green Bay Packers. What's your thoughts on just Aaron Rodgers in general, this whole situation with him and the vaccination, and then also like the Packers' future this season? Like, do you think this affects them the rest of the season? Just give me your take on this whole thing.
Yeah, my first thought is the word immunization, right? Because that is the word that Aaron Rodgers used to describe his situation in the offseason before the season started. Now, I don't know who the reporter was, but during a press conference, they asked Aaron Rodgers about COVID-19 and if he was vaccinated. And his response was, "I'm immunized." Now, that's different than what most people would say. Most people would either come out and say, "Yes, I've gotten the vaccine. Yes, I've gotten one shot. Yes, I've gotten two shots." Or just they would, you know, say, "I'm not," you know what I mean? But like when you say immunized, that pretty much means, yes, I have gotten the shot, right? Like, so he's basically fooling us the entire time.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to fool us, right? The fans, you know, the people that work in media, all that stuff. My question is, how did the NFL not know that Aaron Rodgers was not vaccinated? And potentially the Green Bay Packers. Now, why do I ask that? Because there are different protocols for players and coaches alike, and owners, anyone that is associated with the NFL, to where if you are vaccinated or unvaccinated. If you're vaccinated, you do not have to wear a mask all 24 hours of the day, right, in the facilities. You can walk around without a mask. You can eat lunch at the table with the rest of your teammates and coaches. You can do things socially. If you are unvaccinated, you have to wear a mask 24 hours of the day, right? Or at least for however long you're at the facilities or the stadium or whatever. You can't be around the other team in social settings. You kind of have to eat off to the side or in your own room. You know what I mean? So this whole time, to our knowledge, Aaron Rodgers has been with the team, socializing, traveling in the hotel, going out, all that stuff. I mean, and now all of a sudden it comes out that he's not vaccinated. So, in a sense, the NFL was giving Aaron Rodgers a pass because he is the quarterback, because he's one of the faces of the NFL. So, I'm putting more blame than just on Aaron Rodgers' shoulders. I'm putting some blame on the NFL.
Yeah.
And for not upholding these protocols to every single player, regardless of status. So I think because Aaron Rodgers has so much status, because he means so much to the NFL, this somehow got slipped through the cracks. And it was like, no big deal. Let's just hope he doesn't get it. Well, guess what? He did get it. And now it's a bombshell blown up in his face. And by the way, a $300,000 fine to the Packers and a $12,000 fine to Aaron Rodgers. Get the you-know-what out of here.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding? That's a speedy ticket. That's like, oh man, I can't go to Mastro's tonight because because I gotta pay $12,000. Like, come on, man. Like $12,000. You really want to hurt these guys or hurt the team and make an example out of them? Then make it a $5 million fine to the team, and make it $1 million fine to the player. If you really want to set an example, that's not setting an example at all. And as far as this organization goes, as far as the Packers, no, I think Aaron Rodgers will be back. I mean, he, because he's unvaccinated, he has to be out for at least 10 days. But, so far what the NFL has done and their lack of strict rules and protocol, I don't see any reason why Aaron Rodgers wouldn't be back in uniform on Sunday. Now, I don't know if he's going to be able to practice during the week, but I don't think Aaron Rodgers needs much practice. He will be on the field on Sunday facing off against the Seattle Seahawks and Russell Wilson, who's making his return as well.
Well, I will say this too. Throughout this whole situation, Aaron Rodgers did apologize today on the Pat McAfee show somewhat. He came out and he said that he should not have done what he did. He's a role model. He knows people watch what he does. And a little bit of that narcissism a lot of people have been talking about kind of disappeared. And I was happy to see that, Jared, because if this guy would have all of a sudden been the anti-vax quarterback and the anti-vax NFL star, that's not a good look. Look what happened to Kyrie Irving. He's not playing the sport that he loves, and he's not getting paid the millions that they pay him to play it. So, for Aaron Rodgers' sake, I'm glad he came to his senses, and at least for a little bit, the narcissism shut down. I also think he hears Russell Westbrook's fingers okay, and he's like, I need to step up. Like I can't let my team turn into a 3-loss team when we're battling in the toughest conference in the NFL. So, as we both know, Jared, the NFC is a juggernaut, and you can't afford to lose any games this season. And so Aaron Rodgers, I hope he's ready to go in there, because I'd love to see a shootout between him and Russ, and I'll bet the over in that game 100% if Aaron Rodgers plays.
And that's exactly why I'm saying if there's a chance
for
those two high-profile quarterbacks to match up against each other, the NFL isn't going to let that not happen. Right? The NFL is the one that's in control of this situation, because they can simply say, oh, yeah, Aaron, you feel good enough. What are your symptoms like? Oh, not that bad. You just have a cough. Oh, yeah, it's been 10, 11 days. Go ahead, get back out there. There's no way they're going to miss out on that opportunity. I believe that's a 1:30 game, if I'm not mistaken. Right? Yes. That's a prime time slot for Sunday NFL football. There's no way they will miss out on all that money and all those ratings, all those people watching on TV, just because of a protocol that the NFL, just wants to, depending on your status, apply or not apply.
True. No, I mean, and Jared, like, obviously I'll be watching my Cardinals at that point, but I will have my TV fixed in on that game as well. I always do a little 2 TV setup for the NFL and college football. Those will be the 2 games on for me. I'll be watching my Cardinals dismantle the Carolina Panthers, no matter who their quarterback is, and apparently it's going to be PJ Walker. Breaking news there. Sam Darnold's out with shoulder injury again. His career's over essentially. But to bury the lead, I'll be watching that
Carolina's signing Matt Barkley, by the way, former USC, former Modern Day.
I mean, that's cool that there's a Modern Day in San Clemente High School. There's 2 Orange County high school guys, high school legends, on the same team and 2 USC quarterbacks. But like PJ Walker's an XFL legend, Jared. How do you beat that? You could be an OC legend, and I still might root for the XFL a little bit. You know my other podcast. You know what else I cover, right? So yeah, I mean the Aaron Rodgers thing, it's interesting. For me, I didn't really get my opinion on this, but I think for Aaron, it's like it does seem like his narcissism has got the best of him this time. But I liked that he apologized on the Pat McAfee show and came out and was honest and said he shouldn't have done what he did. That's good for me. It's not like you really did anything, right? You didn't wear your mask a couple times around players. They're all vaccinated. It's whatever, right? All those guys aren't wearing their masks either. You're just putting yourself at risk. I can't blame you for that. I can't sit here and have sympathy for that if you're going to put yourself at risk. And he got COVID, and I'm glad he's okay. But you got COVID because you didn't wear your mask and you didn't get vaccinated. Like, what am I supposed to do? But like, you're right. I just hope it doesn't affect his playing career because I like watching Aaron Rodgers play unless it's against my Cardinals. Because every time it's brutal and it's hard to watch, whether we win or lose. Jared, let's get into our next NFL topic. Taunting. Jared, this has been a big news since Monday Night Football. Okay, you guys are seeing this on Wednesday or Thursday. We're recording this on Tuesday. Obviously, we covered the college football, but we had a huge incident between the referees and the Pittsburgh Steelers last night. Where Cassius Marsh, UCLA guy, shout him out, a good off the field guy, fun guy to follow. He got a taunting penalty for, Jared, I think we both agree, for essentially doing nothing. And not only that, but you have the referee, quote unquote, hip checking him after the play too. Like, and this game was marred with fouls in general. Justin Fields was getting knocked out on every single play, and they weren't calling it, but they're calling weak taunting penalties and weak pass interference penalties. And, but let's get back to taunting. Jared, your opinion on what's going on here. I know you tweeted it out earlier, so obviously you've given your opinion a little bit, but give your opinion on the podcast here.
There's so many layers to this, right? And so I'm going to try to break it down as best as I can, and Nick, chime in whenever you want, because I don't want to take over this segment, but I feel like I have so much to say. Layer one starts with the NFL and the actual officiating rules, right? The NFL comes up with the rules and the guidelines and the do's and the don'ts of the sport, right? So the NFL, in a sense, came out this offseason and said, we're going to implement the more strict rules comes to quoting, right? So as a referee, they are charged with enforcing those rules, okay? So the NFL are the ones that we should really be blaming, first of all, because they're the ones that made the rules. Then the referees are next to blame because they're the ones that are implementing it. But here's the problem. All of that is objective, right? What is taunting versus what is celebrating?
Yeah.
And that's where I really want to dive into this, right? You play basketball, you play multiple sports in your career. I played football, basketball, ran track, all that stuff. Now, neither of us have played at the professional level, but I think both of us know what it's like to be competitors, what it's like to go out and try to beat another opponent. And guess what? Blood, tears, sacrifice a lot of time, sacrifice a lot of parties, sacrifice a lot of things that you would have liked to have been doing, but you chose not to because you were, studying your playbook, or you were working out, or you were getting rest because you knew you had a big game or a big meet or a big whatever that next day, right? You were putting a lot into this sport, right? For an opportunity to make potentially one play in a game. Maybe you only have one opportunity, right? One chance. Maybe as a pitcher, you're a relief pitcher and you only have one hitter that you got to strike out, or you come in as a pinch hitter, like whatever the case may be, right? What I'm trying to say is that these athletes across the board, right? Doesn't matter what sport it is. A lot of these athletes only get one opportunity to make a great play in their entire career. They work their asses off, right? Especially these professional athletes. They go through injuries. They come back from ACL surgeries. They get needles. They get shot up all the time. They play through pain. We ask them to give 110% on every single play. Be hyped up, right? All these things. Then they do make a great play for themselves and for their team, and you expect them to then go from 100% all the way down, like temper down. You're not allowed to celebrate. You can't do that, right? This is where we have an issue. We expect and we put these guys on such large pedestals. We expect them to be great, and we expect so much out of them. And then when they do what we expect, we tell them, no. You can't celebrate. You can't do that. How about we start telling these billionaires and owners of the team and Commissioner Roger Goodell, when you make a trade, right, and you just made $5 million in your, don't go out and celebrate. Don't pop champagne. Don't go to a nice fancy steakhouse. Just sit in your office or go home. I'm trying to think of something that's equivalent. Because now is we have these people that, I'm sorry, no offense, are probably some fat asses that have never played the sport in their entire life and don't know what it's like to be a competitor. So people that are making the rules don't know what it's like to be an actual athlete. Or if they do, they probably forgot because it's been so damn long because they're 60, 70, 80 years old. So the real problem is we have a miscommunication and a disconnect between the people making the rules and the athletes that are actually entered. It's sad. It's pathetic. The rules need to be changed. Let these guys celebrate. Now I'm gonna toss it over to you, and I want to ask you a simple question.
Sure.
What is the difference between celebrating and taunting? Because I have my own definition, but I feel like I've talked for too long. I want to get your definition.
I mean, taunting is realistically. I think here's the thing. We have a culture now, Jared, of on social media. There's a lot of quote unquote taunting, right? Like there's a lot of like what I think is funny is a lot of people taunting people. You know, I watch a lot of the UFC. You can say whatever you want, right? I've grown up with football and basketball, and now baseball has turned into like this over celebrating like sport where like guys are like not even running down to first base after home runs. You know, for me, taunting is like malicious intent to like hurt someone's feelings, right? And I know that sounds kind of pussy, right? Like when I say that, something like that. But like, if you're trying to hurt someone's feelings, you know when someone tries to do that and it pisses you off, right? Whether it be you're playing video games with somebody, or you're just joking around, or you're playing a professional sport. If someone's trying to piss you off by taunting you, you know that's taunting, right? But what Cassius Marsh did last night was not taunting. He was excited about a sack that he makes. Cassius Marsh is not some Pro Bowler, okay? The dude is on practice squads half the time. And yes, I like him because he's a UCLA guy, and he has a good social media presence. But like realistically, besides that, he's kind of a nobody in sports. He makes a big play. Go ahead and celebrate. If the 12th guy off the bench makes a big time three in an NBA game, go ahead and celebrate. If the 26th reliever on an MLB team, the 26th guy on the roster gets a big strikeout at the end of the game, let him celebrate. Okay? And I'm not saying don't let Russell Wilson celebrate, right? Or don't let Cam Newton celebrate, or don't let Antonio Brown. But like, it's got to be an even playing field. I'm sure we've seen over celebrating from Rob Gronkowski this year. Okay, I know he hasn't played that much, but I'm sure him spiking the ball after a touchdown technically could be taunting based on what they've called this year. Dude does that to every touchdown. What, because he's famous? You're not going to call taunting on him? This is where it is. I mean, Jared, it reminds me a lot of Michigan State, Michigan. Doesn't make sense. Why are we calling it on a guy like Cassius Marsh when he does nothing? And when you don't actually hear what he says to that kicker, which he didn't say anything because we saw the replay, and he didn't mean to bump into you, referee, you're just calling it because you were looking for something to happen, right? And that's the problem with this rule in general, Jared, is I think what we've now caused is referees to be looking for taunting after plays instead of reacting with their own hearts about it. Like, I think I'm rambling a little bit here, but like,
No, I'm good. I'm about to pick up your slack because I got a couple things to say.
But you understand what I'm saying, right? Like, if you're a referee and you're not trying to look for taunting on a play, and you see a guy really taunting it, it would kind of piss you off, and you'd be like, I'm gonna throw a flag on that. That's a little too much. You can't throw the ball at the guy. You can't get in his face, stand over him, push him down after the play, all that stuff, use excessive force. That's fine. And when that happens, I actually think there should be a flag. But like when a guy's just celebrating a sack and is just talking crap to the other team, that's not really taunting. If the entire other team came off the sideline, he'd lose the fight. Okay, let him taunt. Okay, like if 60 guys come after him because he taunted the sideline, I think he'd lose. So let him taunt. If he got in the quarterback's face and stood over him, yeah, maybe you call a penalty. But he did nothing. It's just, for me, I don't like when referees are making judgment calls based on their own personalities or based on their own beliefs, because obviously human beings are all different and they're all going to kind of choose the wrong thing occasionally. And I think most NFL fans know that wasn't taunting last night.
No. And let's add more example to that, right? You brought up the Rob Gronkowski. Whenever he scores a touchdown, what does he do? He spikes the ball so damn hard that the ball almost like deflates, right? Yeah. Here's another one, and this has happened for the last couple years now. The defense intercepts the ball, right? Whether they take it back and score a touchdown. What does the entire defense do? They all run to the opposite end zone.
So
they find the nearest camera and they all pose.
Yeah.
We don't find them for that. And Cassius Morris, what's he do? He sacks Big Ben, stands up, right? Looks at the other sideline, doesn't say anything, just looks at him like, yeah, I just made that play. Like you mentioned, he's not a Pro Bowler. He's not a guy that's made millions of dollars in his career. That sack right there could have put him back on the map. He may be with the Chicago Bears for the rest of the season just from that alone sack. That's how big of a deal that one play could potentially be to him. And when he's turning around to walk or to jog back to the sideline, the referee, if you haven't seen the play, actually sticks his butt out a little bit, which caused them to come together. And then the referee throws a flag, which leads me to my next point. Referees, while they're also humans, referees want their names in the papers as well. Referees want the recognition, right? We all think of referees as just numbers, zebras, whatever you want to call them, right? Referees want their recognition as well. And I think sometimes when they haven't been talked about a lot, or, we haven't really heard about referees in a while, this stuff happens. So what I think the NFL needs to do, and why this has not been implemented, because to me, this is one of the most logical things that the NFL could ever do, is make every single referee a full-time employee. They get a year-round salary, they get full benefits, and they have an entire year, all off-season, just like the players do, just like the coaches do, to study film, keep themselves in shape, and get ready for the season. Because, Nick, I'm not sure if you or a lot of other people know, there's only like 20 or 30% of the referees in today's NFL that are full salary employees.
Yep.
The rest, in the offseason, they're not paid or they're not obligated to go and keep themselves in shape or to study game film and look at what teams are doing. They don't have to. They can go do whatever they want. They can get another job. They can go sit on their asses for 8 months and wait for the season to come back around. But we expect these referees to be perfect, right? And make all the right calls and not mess up. Why do we expect that when we're not paying them accordingly? I'm not trying to, in this specific situation with Cassius Morris and the referee, I'm not trying to defend the referee at all. I'm just saying they are potentially making these bad calls because they're not fully invested, because the NFL is not fully invested in them. So I think that's something that needs to change. The NFL, they have enough money. They need to pay these referees like they deserve to be paid so that the referees have zero excuse when it comes to these types of calls.
Well, Jared,
right now, a referee can be like,
well, Jared, if you're going to pay him, though, you also have to have a little bit, I mean, not if you're going to pay him, but if you're going to give him like all full-time salaries and you're going to give him a little bit more money, there then has to be more responsibility, right? And they should have to talk to the media.
Cool with that. That's cool.
Right, Jared, they should have to talk to the media after the game.
That's cool.
They should get fined, right? But we're in the biggest we're in the biggest sports league in America. Probably second biggest sports league in the world behind professional soccer leagues over in Europe, right? And we're sitting here, and the referees are like, could be living at my apartment complex right now. Like, no disrespect to my apartment complex, but like, they shouldn't be living here. They should be living in a penthouse somewhere, right? Like the guys that judge the biggest sports league in the United States should have more responsibility. They should be paid more, and they should have to, be affected by their own actions. And yeah, Jared, I completely agree with you. It was one of the points I was going to make up at the end of the segment too. So I'm glad you brought it up. But yeah, if all that happens, the BS last night doesn't happen. And first of all, and here's the other thing too, change the freaking rule, man. Like, we've changed rules mid-season before. Stop it. And 100% change it for next season. Remember when we had the pass interference that you could review? Remember how kind of a joke that was and how it ruined the game a little bit? Like that, this is what this is, but worse, because they're really not even doing anything. Like, those were actual pass interferences. It just bogged the game down, and it made the game a little lazy, right? This is just BS. Like, this is just the ref's opinion, and maybe he doesn't like a guy and has a preconceived opinion about him, and he's gonna look to call more penalty. Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that in the biggest sports league in the United States, the guys judging the game, the guys potentially making big calls, and the guys that gave the Steelers a better chance to win last night with that call on Cassius Marsh of the Bears, because they had to kick a field goal at the end instead of score a touchdown. Those guys should have to be affected, and a fine is not enough. They should have to answer the media. They should have to feel like the players they are affecting.
I'm gonna put a bow tie on this one, right?
Sure.
I'm gonna sum this all up. Now, this didn't happen last night, because last night was clearly a referee that had an agenda out there to get his name talked about. But I will say that player-to-player situations, professional leagues, college, high school, Pop Warner, whatever, your opponent celebrating, it be. Don't get got. It's as simple as that.
True.
The other opponent deserves to celebrate. You beat your opponent, you deserve to celebrate. It's as simple as that, man. Why are we so childish? Why are we so, oh no, we have to set an example for these other kids? Yeah, I think kids understand, especially kids that play sports, right? When we get 5, 6, 7 years old, you understand the difference from celebrating with the teammates to actually taunting. Yeah. Yes, I totally agree with you. If a player is saying some bad stuff about his mama or cussing at him or doing something like that, or deliberately making a motion towards that player, yes, that is taunting. You stand over a player that's laying on the ground, that is taunting. But celebrating with your team, right, or doing what Cassius Marsh did last night, he deserved 1,000% to celebrate. And if I were him, I would do the same damn exact thing the next week. You don't want another team to taunt, or you don't want another team to celebrate, don't let them do it. Stop them. It's as simple as that.
Sure.
It really is.
You've always preached it. You've always preached it on this podcast, and Jared, you're not wrong at all. All right. Last part of this podcast, we've gone a little long, so we'll shorten this up a bit. Jared, I just want to get your opinion. There was a lot of upsets this weekend, including your Cowboys, including my Cardinals in a positive way. But we also saw the Jacksonville Jaguars beat the Bills 9-6. We saw the Kansas City Chiefs really struggle against Jordan Love. We saw a lot of weird upset games. Do you think that this was just kind of an NFL Sunday that was a little odd? Or do you think there's cause for concern for some of these teams that did lose and did fail this weekend? Let me throw in the Rams as well. The Rams absolutely got blown out by the Titans without Derrick Henry as well. Like, do you think that some of these teams this will really affect, or do you think this was kind of just a weird NFL Sunday?
I'm still stunned by my Cowboys losing. By the way, I don't know how to put words into effect, because really, the final score was 30-16, but what I see is 30-0, because those two touchdowns that the Cowboys had at the end of the game were garbage. I don't know. I'm going to blame myself a little bit because I was on a plane flying home and not watching the Cowboys game. So I feel like if I was watching the game, they could have played a little better. But in all seriousness, you know what? I think we see it every single year, man. We saw it last year where the Jets, who at the time I believe were winless, went to LA against the Rams and they beat the Rams in LA. Now, albeit, we didn't have a lot of fans and all that stuff, and home field advantage is a real thing. But we see it every single year. And so what I'm going to chalk it up to, and hopefully, and for the Cowboys' sake, is that you've got 1 week a year, 1-2 weeks a year where it just doesn't. Like I don't know. Like I am so happy there was more than one upset. Everyone would have been on Dallas, right? Like I don't know many people, unless you were an actual Broncos fan, unless you were Alex Silva, a fan of the show, who actually picked the Broncos to win. Just like the same thing with Jacksonville, and more than likely just like the same thing with the Bears. I'm sorry, the Titans beating the Rams. It's just one of those things where I think the other team gets paid as well. And every once in a while, I think whether it's you overlook a team, whether your guys just aren't, the Cowboys said last week they had a bad week of practice. Now that's not an excuse, because when you lace up on when those lights come on Sunday or Monday or Thursday night, you got to play regardless. But I'm going to simply chalk it up as we will not see that again. Dallas will get better, the Bills will get better, the Rams will get better, all from this. So I'm going to chalk it up as a fluke week, and better not see that again.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fluke week as well, and I'll explain it a little bit. Jerry, I think that this was a trap game for Dallas. You get Dak Prescott back. Cooper Rush won the game against a solid Vikings team, a potential playoff, and they go in and they're at home for the first time in like a month or something crazy like that, and they go in a trap game. That's the excuse I'll give. Now, you shouldn't have been down 30-0. I don't know what that was, but trap game. I'll leave it at that. My Cardinals are just better than the San Francisco 49ers, okay? Doesn't matter if Colt McCoy's on the field. Doesn't matter if Chase Edmonds gets hurt 5 minutes. The Cardinals, it just seems like their locker room is better, and they get the win. Should they beat them as bad as they did? Probably not. But we've seen Colt McCoy go in and beat Seattle in Seattle last year with a far worse team than the Giants, so not that surprising. The Bills, the only excuse I can come up with, the only excuse is that we have seen plenty of teams go into that Jacksonville heat, whether it was playing the Jaguars or not, really, really good teams, like the best teams in the NFL, go in and struggle mightily. Packers, week 1. What have they done with Aaron Rodgers? They're undefeated since that game. The Bills, obviously, they were one of the top teams in the AFC. They go into that game, they lose. My Cardinals, right? Did we kind of struggle against Jacksonville in that game? Yeah, we let them return a touchdown. They're close the whole game. We end up winning, but we struggled, right? And I'm sure if you look at the rest of the games in the NFL, the teams have playing in Florida in the winter is not fun because it's still like 85 degrees and no one's used to that when you're practicing. So I'll chalk that one up to Jacksonville. The one that doesn't make sense to me is the Titans. I don't know why that team is so good without Derrick Henry. And I don't know why the Rams defense can't stop them. I don't know why Matt Stafford's playing so bad with the Rams. Maybe it's one of those things, Jared, where I've always said this about Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, and I take that back this year because they haven't done that this year and they've actually been winning games. But maybe with Stafford, he's just kind of a stat junkie. And he only was good because his teams were so bad all those years that he was always coming from behind and his yards were racking up. But realistically, you put him in big situations and he's not good. And that's what I thought as a Cardinals fan would be the only reason the Rams wouldn't win the Super Bowl is that Matthew Stafford is just not as legit as we think. And I'm kind of right about that so far. Matt Stafford is just not as good as we think. Talk about that, Jared. We'll end the podcast on this. What do you think about Matt Stafford and the Rams, and what do you think about their chances at a Super Bowl? Obviously, they get Von Miller. He didn't play in this game. He'll start to play in the next couple of weeks. But what do you think about Matt Stafford and the Rams? What do you think about their Super Bowl chances after a game like that, prime time against one of the best teams in the AFC.
Yeah, that game does one of two things for you, because I think everyone, including myself, was on the Rams for that game, and I think right now should have been one of the front runners for MVP, is out for the year, right? And it's like the Titans are built on a running the football, controlling the clock, play action with Ryan Tannehill, and then finding your receivers. So without the threat of Derrick Henry, like, I'm sorry, Adrian Peterson, you're just not what you used to be anymore. Jeremy McNichols, sorry, man, you're a depth running back. Yes, you're good in the passing game, but I don't think anyone should be scared of him running in between the tackles, right? So if you're the Rams, I'm saying I'm daring him to throw the ball, right? With Jalen Ramsey, who had an interception in the first quarter. I'm daring him to throw it. I'm lining up 8-9 guys in the box, and I'm saying, try to beat our corners. I don't think they can. I think the problem was Matthew Stafford. You're right. He had 2 interceptions. One of them was worse than the other one. Now, the first one, he was getting sacked and getting thrown into the end zone. And I think for him mentally, in that half second, he said, I don't want. So he was like, let me just, twirl around and throw it. Now, obviously, hindsight, he should have just taken the safety, because what happened was the Titans got the ball, got it down to like the 2-yard line, intercepted it, and then the very next play scored a touchdown. So that one is a little bit more of Matthew Stafford kind of just turning a bad play into a worse play. The second one was really on him, because all he did was stare down his intended receiver that he was trying to throw to, and the safety literally, like, you and I could have picked that off. Like, I played corner, but it's like that easy of a read for that safety to make that play and return it for a touchdown. So when you have that lead to 14 points for the other team, yeah, I don't care how good you are. That's going to be tough to overcome. And then the Titans, man, I think they're stingy. I think they're one of those teams where they take on the persona of their head coach and Mike Vrabel, right? He's one of those bring your lunch pails type dudes. He doesn't care about your stats. They have Julio Jones, for the last 10 years, has been arguably one of the best receivers in the game. Now, he's not a diva type, but Mike Vrabel just says, I don't care who you are. Like, you're going to come and you're going to fit into our system. And they just find guys that do that. They play hard. They keep the game close. And at the end, they somehow find ways to win. That's what they do. They don't get blown out in most cases, right? They always play tough, even if they don't have their guys in there. And they find ways to win. As long as you keep in a touchdown, this Titans team is always there. And that's exactly what they did. They kept the game close. They kept fighting. They didn't give up.
It's so interesting in the AFC. I think everybody thought the Buffalo Bills would just be the clear best team, and the Kansas City Chiefs would be such a good team. But the Titans are now in first place in all of the AFC. And Jared, they have the easiest remaining schedule. Like, the Tennessee Titans might be the number 1 seed in the NFL. They might get a week off. This is going to help Derrick Henry come back. Like, what a crazy story this is. I love Mike Vrabel. I love the way this team plays, so I have no problem with them. And for the Rams, Jared, you talked about it a little bit this last week. You gave up all your draft picks. You got a couple of stars. And then
they're going all in for this year.
Yeah, Jared, then you do that on Sunday? You went all in for that at home? Ooh. It was shocking watching that on Sunday. I didn't even place a bet on the game.
All in or bust.
Yeah.
It's all in or bust. You're either playing in the Super Bowl in your own stadium, or you had a bad season. There is no just getting to the NFC Championship game.
True.
There is no – there might not even be a get to the Super Bowl and lose. Like, you with that team giving up, because guess what, people? In the next 3 to 4 years, they're not going to have any draft capital to add young players to their team. And guess what? You only have X amount of dollars because of the salary cap. So you're not just going to bring in free agents. Guys still want to get paid as well. Now, some guys might take somewhat of a discount knowing how great of a football team that they have. At the end of the day, dudes still want their money. And there's only, a certain discount that they're willing to take. So, yes, the Rams are 1,000% all in this year. It is win a Super Bowl or bust, in my opinion, for this team. And after that performance, they ain't winning jack.
Jared, they have 2 losses on the season. Like I just mentioned with the Titans have the easiest schedule remaining in the NFL. The Rams have the 3rd hardest. My Cardinals, I believe, are third, and Tampa is fourth. So you're looking at NFC teams that they are behind. Not only do they have the loss of the Cardinals, they could reciprocate that, obviously, and then be in direct tie with the Cardinals. But two teams ahead of you in the standings already have easier schedules, and realistically, probably the top two teams. You look at the Cardinals being 8-1, and then the Buccaneers have Tom Brady. Like, come on. We're going to give them. I know their defense has been a little bit depleted, but like they'll beat the Saints the next time they play them. They'll beat the Falcons. They'll beat the Panthers. Like they have an easy division, and they'll get it. They'll get in, and it'll probably be Cardinals Buccaneers, and it'll be the worst game of my life. So to end the podcast, Jared, this has been a fun podcast. A little news. So next week we will do our usual podcast. Maybe we'll do a live college football playoff thing again. Maybe we'll just see. But some news. You guys probably know this. I mean, Jared, you know this. Most of my friends know this. I will be heading next weekend to New Haven, Connecticut for the Harvard-Yale football game. My brother's Yale Bulldogs only have one loss so far in the Ivy League. They are currently tied for the Ivy League championship. They were the Ivy League champions last year. If they just win out, which means one game against Princeton, who's a very, very good team. They're ranked in the top 25 in the FCS before losing last week. If they can beat Princeton, they go into that Harvard game with a chance to be at least co-Ivy League champions. I will be there live. I will be providing content for the Cover 2 podcast. I just wanted to give you guys the heads up. This will be a big week next week. Podcast, I'm giving you content starting Friday. I'll be tailgating. I'll give you guys videos of the game. Hopefully my brother gets a touchdown. And the game will also be on ESPNU, so watch along with me. Also, here's another announcement. I will be at the Arizona Cardinals Indianapolis Colts game on Christmas night as well. So another big podcast moment there. I will be covering that, and Jared, we'll have to build up to that and figure out something to do. But yeah, so two big events the next month. I will be at live sporting events, and the Cover 2 podcast will be along with me. So just a couple announcements there, but starting next week is huge. Not only will we have a podcast that will probably be better than this one, I will be providing content for this podcast in Connecticut. Hopefully I can stay sober enough to make it somewhat competent. Okay, but this is going to be a fun weekend. I'm going to see my family for the first time in a while. I haven't seen my brother play this season. It's setting up for an insane weekend in Connecticut. But yeah, you'll see me freezing cold and paler than ever in New Haven, Connecticut. But yeah.
Can't get much worse.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, so that's what's happening next week. But for this podcast, we are done. What a fun one it was, Jared. I am Nick Nenad.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And we'll see you guys next week. Big podcast week. Let's go.